Hi, everyone. My name is Kirk Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. In today's episode, we're speaking with Greg Bell, an author, motivational speaker, and founder of Water the Bamboo Center for Leadership. Greg is an amazing thought leader and a certified speaking professional, which is the highest earned designation from the National Speakers Association. He is also a TEDx Talk alum and an advisory board member for the Portland TEDx Conference Series. Greg has worked with and impacted thousands of individuals, business leaders, and Fortune 500 companies like Nike, Disney, and Comcast, as well as notable sports teams such as Oregon Ducks football, Gonzaga Bulldogs basketball, and the NBA's Portland Trail Blazers. He also leads the effort behind Coaches versus Cancer, a campaign for the American Cancer Society that has raised over $100 million for cancer research. Join us today as we chat with Greg about inspirational approaches to life, work, relationships, and of course, cuisine. Welcome, Greg. Thank you so much for chatting with me this morning. It's great to see you.
You
look
too.
Great.
Yeah, unbelievable.
How are you?
Really good. Thank you so much for having me on, Kurt. I just been looking forward to this, so thank you.
Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, I'm a little nervous, but so unbelievably excited. We're going to talk a little Ducks, right?
Yeah.
But mostly, how are you doing? How's are you in Portland right now? Or
yeah, I'm in Portland now. I've been on the road a little bit, but just got back and doing good. So excited about the coming summer and fall, and getting everything going.
The world is opening up again a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing a little traveling, and it's very interesting. The first time I traveled, had the mask on, the shield, the gloves. Now it's just like, go.
Go. Plus you're taller than everyone, right?
Yeah,
so you can
right.
see what's coming at you, right?
That's right.
Okay. To kick off, I have so much to talk about. But right off the bat, water the bamboo. I see the bamboo's behind you.
Yeah.
It's an amazing metaphor, analogy. I remember seeing a clip a few years ago of a former Oregon football coach, the infamous Chip Kelly, and he was talking to the press about you. He was talking about watering the bamboo. Yeah. This guy that used to play basketball here, right? Watering the bamboo. But he was really articulate about it, right? Kind of Chip-like, kind of paced, but he kind of got it, right? It was fascinating. To me, it was all about patience, right? And unleashing your potential. But I'm not doing it justice. Talk to us a little bit about water the bamboo.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Chip, that changed my life when he talked about water the bamboo. I'd been doing a lot of work with a lot of leaders just all around the country. And water the bamboo is a metaphor. It's a philosophy around the kind of a giant timber bamboo in which the bamboo farmers will water it for a full year. And after a year, you won't see anything. You'll water it for 2, then 3, then 4. But in the 5th year, giant timber bamboo will rocket 90 feet in 60 days. And as you know, everybody wants that kind of growth. But the question is, do you have that kind of patience to nurture something? And while you're watering your bamboo, by the way, people will tell you it's not going to work. It'll never happen. Just be sure to tell them to mind their own bamboo, keep watering. That's what I tell people.
It's kind of parenting too, right? As you're saying that, I'm thinking about my 10-year-old who won't move up in the batter's box. He won't move back in the batter's box because I could see the pitches coming in and I know what he needs to do,
right.
but I've got to have the patience, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things with parenting or anything. Patience is super important, but you have to be persistent as well. So it's not like you're patient just sitting back. You got to actually work on whatever your craft is or whatever you're trying to improve on. In terms of when I was thinking about water the bamboo, I was thinking about a lot of business leaders or people in their career and that. But that analogy has touched everyone that I can think of. And as you mentioned, parenting, it's like, yeah, of course, be patient with that as well.
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
After a while, he'll be hitting balls out of the park. You're like, whoa, I didn't see that. That's the way that works.
And in his mind, because of what he's doing, not what Dad's saying behind the fence, right? And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Absolutely.
So truth be told, right? So Greg and I actually attended the University of Oregon at the same time.
Go Ducks!
Go Ducks! Go Ducks! Yes, shameless plug there. And very special time in my life, and I know in yours. And you were very well known. You were an athlete there, right?
Yeah.
So people knew Greg Bell, and I laugh. I was telling my family that, hey, I'm going to interview Greg, and we went to college together, and the joke was, yeah, I knew Greg. Everybody knew Greg. But my son's right, real quick, is like, well, did Greg know you? And I'm like, well, I like to think he did. And we ended up, maybe it was probably my senior year, might have been your junior year. But Blair and you guys, you all kind of lived off campus a little bit. And so several times we walked towards campus and stuff. And that was good enough for me, Greg, because in my mind, I know Greg Bell. I know him. Yeah, we, he used to carry his books and stuff. But no, but seriously, I mean, being an athlete, studying, I wonder if you could reflect a little bit. You were in Eugene, but there's athletes all around the country, right, around the world. I'm just curious if you can speak to your responsibilities as you recall as a student during that time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good, because I think that I was definitely put the student first. I was because I spent a lot of time in the library. For me, it was so important to get my degree. My grandfather, he was such a influence in my life. I mean, he wasn't allowed to go to school, couldn't read and that, but he told me that three things would get us out of the challenging situation we were in, poverty, really. He said three things, and one was education, number two was education, number three was education. So it meant a lot to me. And in fact, my grandfather, he called me probably once a week from Texas, and very early in the morning, and he would just say, you graduate yet? Every week. But he was really on me about it, because it was such an important thing. And for me, it was awesome to play sports there and have my schooling paid for. But getting the education was like really vital to me and my family.
Such good feedback that young people today need to hear, how important education truly is. Super thoughtful. So your grandfather was a bamboo farmer, essentially, right? Without even knowing it. So how does that experience drive you? I think law school followed, right? So now you're in this world, you're well known. You've worked with different organizations that I've been with, and you're working with Escoffier now. What's really important to me is that our work together is about leadership. It's about leadership. It's about helping people better operate, right? Think about things differently, treat each other well, that kind of thing. How did the motivational speaker piece, and it's so much more than that, how did that come to be after college, after law school, all of that?
Yeah, it was actually, honestly, it was out of a little bit of pain. I was working as a lawyer, and what I noticed about my clients is they would come in with all kinds of challenges and all kinds of problems. And one of the things I noticed with all of them was they had one particular issue, and they'd never worked on it. And that issue was they didn't do relationships very well. I mean, they were, smart people. They were, really driven in their businesses and that. But usually the problems were a breakdown in relationship. So what I thought was somebody ought to teach people how to be better in relationships. And I only get 45 seconds a day to complain. So I complained for my 45 seconds. And then I thought, wow, why don't I do that? Why don't I figure out a way to do that? And I thought, if you ask yourself, have you ever taken a relationship class? Probably answer is no. Nobody's taken a relationship class. People take math classes, science classes, and English classes. But if you ever had any challenges or had any great opportunities, it's probably because you had great relationships or bad ones. I mean, and so for me, I think relationships were key. So I created a model that I went around and taught people how to have great relationships. I didn't know how it would work out. In fact, after every talk I would give on this, how to build trust, how to cultivate relationships, how to take risks, how to empower yourself and each other to move whatever it is you're trying to do. And after every talk, some people would say to me, hey, you should write a book. And I was like, no, you should write a book. And one day, an executive, she told me, she says, if you wrote a book, it would help my team. And that's really what I'm all about. It's like helping people. So I thought, well, I'll start writing. So maybe I'll write something that'll help people. That was really my motivation. But that's how I got into the business of speaking.
So the books kind of came first. You wrote the book as the foundation of what came later.
Yeah, it's kind of, I started speaking first. It took me
Okay.
a while
Okay.
to do that because I was really finding my voice. What was interesting about that part was it was really, it, honestly, it was about pain though. It was like, how do I help people overcome these broken down relationships, particularly in business, that really shouldn't be there? Because as a lawyer, people would come to me at the end, like when they want to,
Help.
yeah, they want to
Yeah.
sue their business partner or they want to fire the employee or whatever. And I always thought, man, if they had better relationships, they wouldn't have to wind up here. That was
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
the theory.
Yeah.
And a theory chases the truth. So I just kind of went out and, you know, and started speaking about it. And to my surprise, people were really into it.
And
So
receptive. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it was, and then the books came. That's how that works.
So here's the plug, right? So that parlayed into what's going well, and I'm
Yeah.
always wearing my band. There's
Oh,
my
I like
band.
hearing that.
What
Yeah.
what's going well, and then water the bamboo, and I love the kind of the subtitle, unleashing the potential of teams and individuals, right? So you started to touch on it. Is it the same philosophy for both books? Is there an underlining theme through all of it?
What's interesting about Water the Bamboo, I know Water the Bamboo, it really resonated with you. It resonated with Escoffier. It resonates. Like it's one of those things where people kind of get that. Because, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. You start a restaurant, it's going to take you 5 years to get it going. You start your career, 4 or 5 years to get it going. It takes 4 or 5 years to finish school. I mean, all these things, people get it. And
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
noticed is when I wrote that, it's got to be 10 years ago. When I wrote that book, the people that really were watering their bamboo and really getting it going, they got it. But what's going well was about refueling them, really
Oh,
thinking about
yes, yes.
what's going well while you're watering. Because a lot of times people will say, oh, 4 or 5 years, I'll be happy. No, no, no. We can't. We got to be happy now. We got to actually be happy while we're watering. So if we ask what's going well and really focus there, that gives people in some ways, the water, actually the fuel to keep slugging away. Because 4 or 5 years of not seeing results, that can get
It's
pretty
tough. It's
painful. Yeah,
tough.
that
Yeah,
can get
yeah.
painful.
So it's tough to be a bamboo farmer. Here's the book, right?
Yay!
It's always
Yeah,
close by.
that's good.
Always close by. I will say this again. Um, we've been in communication for a lot of years, and I will say that it's tough. It's tough enough every day to bring your best, and I will say that for Escoffier, starting each day with the simple notion, and maybe even at home, right when we all get up, of what's going well right off the bat, instead of, oh, the coffee's cold or the
Right.
internet's not working or who left the door open, that type of thing. It's really what's going about well. And I say that sincerely, Greg, because it really sets the tone for the culture and the rest of the meeting or the rest of the day. Let's
Absolutely.
try to level set.
Yeah.
Let's focus on the positives for a minute and then find solutions for whatever challenges we have. So
Right.
so I
Right.
love that. I love that. And so earlier, I mentioned, boy, you've worked with some really, really neat companies, Nike, of course, and Disney, Comcast, the Ducks, um, Mark Few, right?
Yeah.
Was a roommate of yours, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We were roommates in college. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Coaching Gonzaga. Any any really cool stories or learnings or takeaways that you can share? You could leave the names out if you have to.
Yeah. That's good. I've had a lot of just, I feel really, really fortunate to be able to do the work I do. So there's that. I mean, I have to be honest about it because it's one of those things where I thought, oh, I'm going to go be a lawyer and I'm going to help people. What I didn't realize is that I can help them before. I can
Yeah,
actually get people
yeah.
kind of on the right track before, and I've had a lot of help doing that. Some of the companies that I've worked with that have been like just absolutely remarkable, and I still stay in touch. For me, I think it's so important to think about relationships. So all my relationships, even way back from college, even with you and even with Mark, and I have thousands of friends from college that I still stay in touch with. My theory is this: is that it's the relationship age. Individuals that understand this will thrive. Companies and organizations. So, working with organizations in the way that I do, I get tons of stories. You ask about stories. I get tons of stories and feedback. and I get to learn also from them what's important to them. I do a lot of kind of listening, and also just if they have results and success, then I have
And
it.
you do.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I
Yeah.
do. But I don't like to take credit for it. Honestly, it's more like, oh, Gonzaga goes to the national championship. I mean, I never touched the ball for that team. It's
They
just,
do the work too, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always
That
feel
makes
like
sense.
it's kind of like, I mean, I guess you and I have had many conversations, but one of the things that's interesting is if we saw ourselves as leaders, as our job is actually to fuel ourselves so that when people come to us, we can give them fuel, right? Like a punch bowl, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
your kids come to you, you give them some energy. Your family comes to you, give them energy. And that's, in my job is to make sure I have energy. Like that's it. That's all I got to do. I don't worry about it, who takes the energy. Just make sure I fill it up. That's my theory on it all. So
Yeah. I love that approach. And so fast forward a little bit. We've talked a lot through the pandemic, and and many believe we're coming out of the pandemic. It's certainly a much
yeah,
more optimistic time,
absolutely.
thankfully. But there still are many fears, right? The economy, businesses being shut down, or at least needing to find a way to get back to where they were, to recover, if you will. Health for so many. So many people I know, people had their lives sort of put on hold or
Absolutely.
changed dramatically, right? The culinary industry was particularly hit hard, right? We all know this. A lot of restaurants had to shut down. A lot of people lost their jobs. Certainly coming back strong, which is so exciting to see. Any takeaways from that perspective, applying your philosophies? I'm sure that you've had folks reach out for help with exactly what we're talking about, but any philosophies or perspectives that you can share?
Yeah, I think that I would say both the asking the question, what's going well, this is in a hard time is the best time to ask it, actually.
Yeah.
It's interesting because a lot of times we, what's going well while you're on the honeymoon, well, that's easy. But asking what's going well when it's really, really challenging is super important. It was interesting when the pandemic hit. For me, I was doing a speech in San Antonio. I came back, and a lot of my programs got postponed. And honestly, what I said to myself was, wow, I'll get a sabbatical. I get some time off. And as I'm sitting on the couch, what I realized is there's so many people stepping up, like first responders, like people, doctors and nurses, and people retooling and making masks. I mean, a lot of people were doing some amazing things.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, why am I sitting on the couch? I'm supposed to be helping people. So I started calling my clients, and many of them, I said that I'd worked what's going well with. They said, hey, we're fine. We're going to focus on what's going well. That'll give us fuel to deal with any challenges coming forward. And then that was interesting, just sort of getting that feedback from people. Like 9 out of 10 said, we're going deep into what's going well, looking for opportunities, looking to adjust. I think that's what people that will have success going forward will do. But one of the big keys here is it's so important for every individual listening to this. Don't farm alone. The myth of the singular genius, or I got to do it by myself, is wrong. Reach out to your friends, reach out to your family, and get assistance, get help. And because that's how we pull through things, I think, is that we actually need to rely on each other. What I noticed is people that didn't do that, isolated, they're really hurting. I mean, depressed and all those things. So what I say to people is ask what's going well, but make sure you reach out to your network and accept and receive help, because farming alone is not a thing to do. There's many other things I would say to that, but right away I created some principles that I would live by through COVID. One of the first ones was first rules is having healthy dose of forgiveness, because this is my first pandemic. Like I forgive myself, I forgive others.
Mine too.
Yeah. So it's it's this huge thing people are going through. But you've done it before though. You have persons driving along, they have a student driver on their car.
Sure.
You kind of give them room, you give them grace, right? You go to the grocery store, somebody has an in training on their badge, you give them grace. I think we need to give each other a little grace. through the challenging time that folks are going through. If you're had success during the pandemic and you're kind of made it, look back to reach and help somebody else.
No,
I think it's
I love that.
important.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love extending grace. That's beautifully said. From a personal perspective, Gretchen, my wife, and I are trying really hard to recognize, screen time is a thing, right? For kids. And we asked our children to jump on the screen for a year and a half in some cases, right? And now all of a sudden it's summertime, right? For all intents and purposes, school's over for a few months, and the kids are really comfortable in front of the screen. So we have found it to be somewhat difficult. We have to catch ourselves. We have to be careful with just pulling them away. Let's temper them out of this again. So lots of sports, lots of outside activities. Greg, do you think, in your opinion, during challenging times, like a pandemic, do people find inspiration perhaps more so in a challenge environment versus a normal environment?
I'm not sure. I think that some people are like, the people in the front row, in my audiences, they're always there, and they're kind of, but I think that's, I like to speak to the back row, kind of that group that's like not sure. But I'm not sure about that. I think that inspiration is interesting because I like to describe this way. So motivation comes from within, inspiration out. So you can get inspiration anywhere. I mean, you can go out in the woods and get inspiration. You can get it from me, you can get it from you, you can get, but motivation, that's yours. So it's like it's like the motor in the car. Like the motor's fine, but it needs fuel to go. You need to stop and fuel up. So for me, I think if you're, I think people that, we do need fuel, and it's interesting too, because I worked with a group one time, the CEO was hilarious. He called me, he said, what you did for our group, that worked for a year, but after that, it didn't work very well. And I was thinking, man, it worked a whole year. But you know what I mean? Like,
bravo.
It was interesting because his expectation that it was going to be a lifetime of inspiration.
Like forever. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, when you you drive your car, you don't just drive, you have to fuel it up. I mean, even if it's electric, you got to plug it in.
Continuously.
Yeah. So for me, I think people get confused about inspiration. And I think inspiration is one of those things where, I mean, I get inspired by my audiences. I get inspired by reading other books. I get inspired all kinds of ways, going to nature. So how do you, back to that refueling, you got to refuel your bucket. I got my watering can here. I got to, so I can keep water in, man. I'm ready to go.
He's got the props right there. I love it. I love it. I love it. Shifting a little bit, but not terribly far from the conversation, and not to put you on the spot, core relationships, either post-pandemic or even pre-pandemic. Do you find in your work over the last 2 decades or so that core relationships have changed over time?
What do you mean by changed? Like
just the way I interact with my wife, the way I interact with you, the way I interact with students, employees. Has it changed? Technology, has that kind of informalized it a a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if you're,
in college, we would walk together, and if you had something to say, you just said it, right? That relationship was real. It was real time. I have my own opinions. I think that not that it's wrong. I leverage social media and technology as much as I possibly can, but I think it's made it easier. A text instead of a phone call, right?
Sure. I think it's an and world. So in that regard, so there's like if you ask yourself, do you want more transactions or do you want transformation? You ask anybody, they're going to say, well, I want transformation. Well, texting and sort of what you're talking about can be really transactional. Like we're living these transactional relationships and you have a transactional life. Nothing transforms there. The math is different in transformation. So what do I mean by the math is different? Well, in transactions, 1 + 1 is 2. Right? You give me a cup of coffee and I pay for it. You give me it's just a simple transaction. Transformation happens differently, where 1 + 1 is infinity. You give me an idea, I give you an idea. What does that give us? I started with 1 idea, I ended up with 2. Now you have 2. those ideas marry, and then on and on and on. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Sure. Yeah.
It takes a little more time for transformation. It takes for me to know you a little bit better. It takes, it's slowing down. And, I know, talking about like dining, that's really the difference between dining and eating. Eating, you just scarf it down. Dining, we slow down. We enjoy ourselves. We break bread, or drink wine, whatever it is. You kind of slow it down a bit. And I think if you're eating up your life, you'll feel it in the end. Transformation, you'll feel that too. And I think most people want what you're alluding to, like, what the way it was before. However, it's an and world, as I said.
Yeah.
There are times where it's good to send a text. There's times where it's important. I mean, actually, I text my girls that live in the Seattle area. I text them all the time. And sometimes it's just asking them what's going well. I'll just say, give me 3 things going well. And what I get back is unreal. Like I'll get back.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's transactional. But,
sure.
Sometimes I'm jumping on the phone after I get the text back, because
of course. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway. No. That's a great way to look at it. I tried to be super cognizant about that. I love the and versus the or. It's an and, not an or. Because when you're working with people every single day, you want to be respectful of how I'm going to use the transaction versus transformation. I think that's that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, it's for me, it's a good way for me to sort of measure what I'm doing. Like I noticed that with a client, that I was being really transactional with a client. And I thought, wait a minute, slow down. Then I remember going back and getting on the phone with them. I didn't apologize or anything. I just sort of just made it more transformation. Because I was just being too hurried. I was just moving too fast. It's like, wait, slow down. What do these guys really need? What's going on for their organization? And then that's when things started to move and change. It was very interesting, though. I think for the individuals listening, it's good to just kind of measure that. Like if you're being transactional with your wife, your partner, or your kids, sometimes that's okay. It's a busy time. Just that's okay. But ask yourself, is that really how you want to be with them?
Yeah.
And most of the time people are going to go, whoa, I got to slow down and, look at him or her in the eyes every once in a while. And
be a better farmer. It's okay to slow down, have patience. Hey, let's talk coaches versus cancer. Fascinating. I don't know as much about that. That's something you started or have been a part of for the last decade or so, or?
Yeah, I don't participate in it now, but I started back in like 93. It was sort of a random idea. There's a guy named Jerry Quick with the American Cancer Society that I worked with, but we had this sort of wacky idea. It was kind of silly in a way. I thought that if I could get coaches to participate in this, basketball coaches to participate in this, we could raise a lot of money. Like that was sort of this random idea. And I tried to convince the American Cancer Society and the Coaches Association to do it. And I will say, when I say I, and anytime in this thing, it's a small I, because I had a lot of help. But one of the things that was interesting is I told the American Cancer Society, I said, hey, if you got these coaches, it'd be just awesome. They go, well, we have Relay for Life. Why do we want to do that? And also I had no personal connection with cancer. Although a decade later, my father passed away of leukemia. So it was kind of interesting. Like I'd worked on this project, but didn't have any sort of connection with cancer in terms of a personal story. But it was interesting. So I convinced the American Cancer Society guys by saying that if you got the men's coaches to do it, you get a whole different audience. Yeah. And then I thought the coaches needed some PR. That was my pitch. And they gave me a budget and they said, oh, give it a go. They didn't give me the budget I wanted. And so I just went, I bought a house in Lawrence, Kansas, sight unseen, 200 yards from Allen Fieldhouse.
My goodness.
Allen Fieldhouse is where the KU plays basketball.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
Because Roy Williams was the basketball coach at KU at the time.
Okay.
So I'd walk 200 yards every morning to Roy's office and ask him to do stuff. He said yes to everything. He did. He said, and so he was like, he just retired from North Carolina.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because I figured if I get Roy to do it, all the Big 12 coaches. I was just focused on the Big 12 at the time.
Big voice and right,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Just an
yeah.
amazing man.
Sure.
And we got Norm Stewart also involved at University of Missouri, and the two of them really launched without them, this program wouldn't have happened. And
that is such a great story.
Yeah, and so then we just kind of grew it from,
yeah,
we kept going. Like, it was great.
I mean, $100 million.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
that's phenomenal, right?
Yeah, it may be more, but the cool thing about that was we it was so fun. The coaches are so competitive. So we had like the top 20 fundraisers. Like, I remember Syracuse was always one of the top teams, and so we would print that in the
coaches love stacked rankings, right?
Oh,
they love that. Yeah, yeah.
They wanted to be number one, and
of course.
I think it was the Maryland Coach Williams, forget his name, Gary Williams. I think
Gary Williams. Yeah.
Once he won the national championship, I mean, I'm watching this in my hotel room. His team won the national championship, and they went up to him and they said, "Hey, congratulations on winning the national championship." He says, "Before I talk about that, I want to talk about our work with Coaches versus Cancer." I mean, I fell out of my bed. I was like, "Oh my God." That just made,
I've got chills right now just hearing that.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool.
That's beautiful.
It was a great idea, and it still goes. I came back to Portland like in '97. I just I'm a starter. So I started it, and the American Cancer Society still runs it. So
and get it going. Yeah. Are you doing any coaching now at all? You're so busy, but are you...
Not really. Like, I mean, I go watch my kiddo play, but
yeah,
she's
and try to keep your mouth shut. Well,
oh yeah, I don't no way, man. It's like, this is your game, you do it. Yeah, it's kind of fun because you just kind of go through stages, right? So having played basketball and then have a kid that likes to play, it's just so wonderful just to watch her have just a great experience. I mean, I love it that the girls' game has grown so much, so she's having a lot of fun. So
that's wonderful. Here we got to talk a little Ducks, right? But does it make you smile when you see how wonderful? I mean, you've got the Nike piece, right? So the uniforms are great on the football field, they're great on the basketball court, in the track, all of that. Yeah. But I mean, Oregon basketball is on the map, right? When you say, yeah. I mean, so good.
They're so good. Dana Altman's done such a great job. In fact, he had players back, ex-players back, and he was so great about it. He goes, "Yeah, anytime you want to come to a game, come to a game." He's just so inclusive of all the ex-players in that, because I always tell people that I played in the dark days of Oregon basketball compared to now. So that
well, it was kind of dark in Mac Court, right? Yeah. The lights were really, really, really dim, and
it's beautiful now.
Hey, Dana hasn't called me, invited me to the games yet. So come on, Greg, come on. Hey, anything super, super cool that you're working on right now that you can give us a sneak peek into?
Being on a podcast with you is super
How about that? Yeah, like yeah. And you're going to address leadership at Escoffier here in a few weeks in Las Vegas. We are so excited about that. Yeah. The culture is and I always say to everyone is, Greg's part of the family now. He's part of the family, and it's really beautiful. And no, we appreciate it. We've only got a couple of minutes left, Greg, but I'm going to make you a culinarian no matter what. You're our leadership mentor, but I like to ask everyone what in their mind is the ultimate dish. And again, it doesn't have to be a specific dish. It could be how you like to eat or who you like to dine with. I love the dining versus eating analogy. In many ways, you already answered the questions, but is there an ultimate dish in the Bell house?
So easy for me. It's salmon.
Of course, Northwest.
Salmon. It's like
prepared how? How?
I like it in so many ways. It's actually the salmon I like. I like sockeye, and I like Alaskan salmon. And so what's interesting about it, you can grill it, you can barbecue, you can do all kinds of things with it. But what's interesting is I was thinking about that, for me, it's I remember asking my family, I said, what food do you think I love? And everybody just screamed, salmon.
Salmon. And it's good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah,
do you do most of the cooking then? or
I would say I do a little bit. If it's salmon, I'm probably going to cook it. But it's interesting about that is like there's back to the sort of this dining thing, and like I really like spending time, family meals. It's really, I think a lot of people in the pandemic are having family meals, but man,
Sure.
that's kind of my jam. And it's like we play board games or whatever, and that kind of stuff. So it's like home is really important to me. I mean, I spend a lot of time on the road, but I like being at home, just hanging out and dining with my fam.
I love it. I love it. So we'll be in Vegas soon. So I'm gonna have to find the right salmon dish for you. No pressure. No pressure.
You don't have to do but yeah, one of the things you were asking about, like, am I up to something that, I have my own podcast too, Water the Bamboo podcast, and it's really fun. And I may have to reverse this and have you be on mine. I like that.
Yeah. Anytime. And the way I look at this too, I hope you'll come back, right? 35, 45 minutes is not that long, and things change, life changes.
Sure.
Maybe we can dig a little deeper next time, get a little bit more specific, talk more sports. I absolutely love it. And
yeah,
I know how busy you are. Are you taking off anywhere soon in the next week or so? Are you
headed to LA? Head to LA on Thursday. So
okay.
It's kind of interesting with the world opening up and live programs opening up. I'm super pumped. But I have to say, it's kind of funny. I did a program, live program, the first one. So awkward. It was so awkward. The audience had masks on, and I couldn't tell who was talking or who asked the question.
Who's smiling, who's laughing, who's crying.
So,
yeah.
Change is this thing, though, man. It's like it's really interesting. The stages of change, being aware, and then you got to commit, and then there's that pain and discomfort, like, whoa. And so I'm kind of experiencing that going back out.
Do you talk about that when you're on stage?
Absolutely.
You might as well, right?
From a leadership perspective, you understand that vulnerability is so important because, like measured vulnerability, like if it's helpful to the audience. Yeah, certainly. I like to talk about just struggles, because one of the things that, remember the Wizard of Oz, he's behind the curtain. Don't look behind the curtain.
Oh yeah, Oz.
Like I think I let people behind the curtain a little bit in my life, because I think I don't want to come off as like holier than thou. It's like, it's not true. It's like, there's struggles, and we all have to work on stuff. I have to ask myself what's going well too. I have to really focus on that, or what went well, so that I can keep watering as well. So.
Do people appreciate the transparency? I think they do.
I hope so. The ones that don't, or they want it to be perfect, I try to get them to mess up. Like why don't you mess something up?
Let's bring it back down to earth, all right? Fundamentals.
Mess something up. Yeah. Like, because I think chefs probably get this. If you're like an artist, right? You're trying to figure out the right sauce and the way it goes. It's not going to be perfect every time. You want it to be really good, but it might not be. But then get back on and keep watering and keep perfecting it.
Patience. Yeah, I love it. Well, we're going to continue to water our bamboo. I've got my bamboo right back here next to the candle. And Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. Always good to see you, and I'll see you in a few weeks.
Yay.
All the best, Greg. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast, where you'll find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. You can also browse other episodes and subscribe.